name is Anna. I am 22 years old, and this is my story. I did not grow up in a nice house. My family lived in a small apartment. It was on the 5th floor. There was no elevator. Every day, we walked up the stairs. The paint on the walls was old and peeling. The windows were small. Not much sun came in. My father worked very hard in a factory. He came home every night looking tired. His hands were rough. His face was gray with dust. My mother cleaned houses for rich people. She would tell me about their beautiful homes. Big rooms, soft carpets, shiny floors. I would listen, and I would dream. I dreamed of a different life. A life without worry. A life where we had enough food. A life where my parents didn't look so tired. I wanted pretty clothes. I wanted to live in a house with a garden. I wanted to be rich. This was my biggest dream. My only dream. It felt so far away. Like a star in the sky. Beautiful, but impossible to touch. I worked in a small coffee shop after I finished school. I served coffee to people who had easy lives. They wore expensive suits. They talked about vacations and big houses. I would smile and pour their coffee, but inside I felt a deep ache, a deep wanting. Why them? Why not me? One day, an old man started coming to the coffee shop. He was very old, maybe 65 or even 70. He had white hair. His face was full of lines, but he wore a very expensive suit. A big, shiny car waited for him outside. Everyone in the coffee shop was quiet when he came in. He had an aura of power, an aura of money. His name was Mr. Arthur Sterling. He always sat at the same table by the window. He ordered black tea, no sugar. He would read a newspaper. He never smiled much, but he was always polite to me. "Thank you, young lady," he would say in a low, quiet voice. I was nervous around him. He was from a different world, a world I only saw in magazines. I served him tea every day for months. I made sure his cup was clean. I brought his tea quickly. I gave him my best, prettiest smile. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted him to see me, to notice me. One afternoon, the coffee shop was almost empty. It was just me and him. He looked up from his newspaper. His eyes were pale blue. They looked tired. "You work very hard," he said. His voice surprised me. He had never said anything more than thank you before. "I have to," I said, a little too quickly. "My family needs the money." He just nodded slowly. He looked at me for a long time. I felt like he was seeing everything. My cheap dress, my old shoes, the hunger in my eyes. "What do you want from life, young lady?" he asked. The question was so direct, so big. I didn't know what to say. The truth. Should I tell this rich stranger my deepest secret? I took a breath. "I want to be rich," I whispered. I felt embarrassed saying it out loud. It sounded so greedy, so simple. He didn't laugh. He just looked at me with his tired, blue eyes. "Money doesn't solve everything," he said. "It would solve my problems," I replied. I thought about my father's tired face, my mother's sore hands, the leaky roof in our apartment. It would solve everything. He was quiet again. He finished his tea. He left a very big tip on the table. As he walked to the door, he stopped. He turned back to me. "My wife passed away 2 years ago," he said. The words just hung in the air. "The house is very big and very quiet." Then he left. I didn't understand why he told me that. But I thought about it all night. A big, quiet house. He was lonely. I was poor. An idea started to form in my mind. A crazy, dangerous idea. It was a dark thought, but it shone like a diamond in the darkness of my life. He kept coming to the coffee shop. We started to talk a little more each day, not about anything important. The weather, the news. He asked about my family. I told him about my father's hard work, my mother's dreams for me. He listened. He always listened. I started to feel a strange connection to him. Not love, not friendship, something else. Something like opportunity. One day, he asked me to have dinner with him. Not at a fancy restaurant. He invited me to his house. The house my mother would talk about. A mansion. My heart was beating so fast. I said yes. I borrowed a nice dress from my friend. It was still not very fancy, but it was the best I had. His house was not a house. It was a palace. A long driveway. A huge wooden door. A man in a suit opened the door. Inside, everything was marble and gold. The ceilings were so high. There were big paintings on the walls. It was silent. So silent. It felt like a museum. Cold and beautiful. We ate dinner in a dining room that was bigger than our whole apartment. A cook served the food. We were the only 2 people at a long, long table. It felt strange. He asked me more questions about my life, about my dreams. I was honest. I told him I wanted to escape my life. I wanted to give my parents a good life. I wanted to be secure. He listened quietly. Then he looked at me. His eyes were serious. "I can give you that," he said. "I can give you all of that. A beautiful home. Fine clothes. No more worries about money." My breath caught in my throat. I knew what was coming next. "I am an old man, Anna," he said. "I am lonely. I need a companion, a wife. It would be a marriage of convenience. A partnership." He was asking me to marry him. This old man, this stranger. My mind was spinning. Marry him. Live in this cold, silent house. Be the wife of a man older than my father. It felt wrong. Crazy. But then I thought of the peeling paint. The endless stairs. My father's cough. My mother's tired hands. I thought of the life I wanted. The life I dreamed of. It was right here, in front of me. All I had to do was say yes. It was a price. A very big price. My youth, my freedom, maybe my happiness. But the prize was everything I ever wanted. I looked across the long, polished table at him. At his old, lined face. He was just watching me. Waiting. I saw my whole life stretching before me. One path was hard and gray. The other was bright and golden. But the golden path had a dark shadow. I made my decision. I would be smart. I would be strong. This was a deal, a transaction. I would play the part of a loving wife, and in return, I would get my dream. I would win. Those two words slipped from my lips. I'll marry you. He paused, then a small smile touched his lips. It didn't quite reach his eyes. As my life changed irrevocably in that moment, I thought only one thing. Let the game begin. The wedding was very small, very quiet. There were no friends, no family, just me, Arthur, and two witnesses I didn't know. I wore a simple white dress. Arthur bought it for me. It was made of silk. It was the most expensive thing I had ever touched. It felt strange on my skin, like a costume. We stood in a cold, official-looking room. We said the words, "I do." The words felt heavy in my mouth, like stones. After it was over, he gave me a small kiss on my cheek. His skin was dry and cool. There was no party, no celebration. We just got back into his big, silent car and drove back to his big, silent house. My new home. My old life was gone. I packed my few clothes from our small apartment. My mother cried. She was happy, she said. Happy that I would have an easy life. But her eyes looked sad, worried. My father just hugged me tightly. He didn't say much. "Be a good wife, Anna," he whispered. I knew he was scared for me. I was scared too, but I didn't show it. I smiled. I promised to visit. I promised to help them. This was for them, I told myself. This was for all of us. Living in the mansion was like living in a dream. Or maybe a movie. My closet was now a room. A whole room filled with beautiful clothes. Shoes with high heels. Soft sweaters. Dresses for every occasion. Arthur gave me a credit card with no limit. "Buy whatever you like," he said. "You are Mrs. Sterling now. You must look the part." So I played the part. I bought the clothes. I had my hair done at expensive salons. I learned to walk in high heels. I learned which fork to use at dinner. My life became a performance. Every morning, I woke up in a huge bed with silk sheets. The room was always a little cold. I would look out the big window at the perfect garden. It was beautiful, but it didn't feel like mine. My days were empty. Arthur went to his office most days. He ran a large company. He was very busy. He would leave early. He would come home late. I was alone in the giant house all day. The only other people were the staff. The cook, the cleaner, the gardener. They were all very quiet. They called me Mrs. Sterling. They were polite, but distant. They knew. They must have known why I was there. I was the young wife. The pretty object Arthur had bought. I tried to fill my days. I read books from the huge library in the house. I walked in the perfect, manicured garden. I swam in the big, blue pool. It was a life of luxury. The life I had dreamed of. I had everything, and I had nothing. I was so lonely. The silence of the house was deafening. It was much louder than the noise of my old neighborhood. I missed the sound of children playing in the street. I missed the sound of my neighbors arguing. I missed the sound of life. Dinners with Arthur were the hardest part. We sat at that long, polished table. The cook served us perfect food, but we rarely talked. He would ask about my day. "What did you do today, Anna?" he would ask. "I read a book," I would say. Or, "I went for a walk." He would nod. Then he would talk about his work, about meetings, about money. I didn't understand most of it. I just nodded and smiled. I tried to look interested. It was part of the game. Be the perfect, attentive wife. He wanted to show me off. We went to fancy parties, charity events, dinners with his rich friends. I felt like a doll on display. The other women were older. They wore expensive jewelry and looked at me with cold, curious eyes. They knew what I was, a gold digger. The men, Arthur's friends, would look at me too, but in a different way. Their eyes made my skin crawl. Arthur would hold my arm tightly. "This is my wife, Anna," he would say. He sounded proud of his new, young possession. I smiled. I laughed at the right times. I said polite things. But inside, I felt empty, hollow. I would look at my reflection in the big windows. I saw a beautiful stranger, a girl in a designer dress with sad eyes. Who was she? Was this really me? Was this the life I wanted? I had the money. My parents moved into a nice, new house. I paid all their bills. My father stopped working at the factory. My mother didn't have to clean houses anymore. I had won. I had given them a better life, but I felt like I had lost myself completely. Sometimes Arthur tried to be kind, in his own way. One day, I had a bad cold. I stayed in bed. I felt miserable. He canceled his meetings. He stayed home. He brought me tea. He sat in a chair in my room and read his newspaper. He didn't talk much, but he was there. It was strange. I didn't expect it. It confused me. My game had rules. He was the old, rich man. I was the young, pretty wife. We had a deal. Kindness was not part of the deal. It made him seem human. And that made the game harder to play. Another time, he saw me looking at a painting in the hallway. It was a painting of a beautiful beach. Bright sun, blue water. "Do you like it?" he asked. I nodded. "It's beautiful," I said. "It looks so peaceful." The next week, he gave me a small box. Inside were 2 airplane tickets to a place with a beach just like the painting. "We can go next month," he said. I was shocked, but we didn't go. Something at work came up. The trip was canceled. He didn't mention it again. It was a small gesture, a forgotten promise, but it showed me something. He was not just a cold, calculating man. He was lonely. And maybe, in his own way, he was trying. But he didn't know how. But there were other times. Times that reminded me this was a transaction. I once bought a bright red dress. I loved it. It made me feel alive. When Arthur saw it, he frowned. "That color is a bit loud, don't you think?" he said. Mrs. Sterling should be more elegant, more subtle. I never wore the red dress again. He didn't yell. He didn't command. But his quiet disapproval was enough. I learned to dress for him, to speak for him, to be the person he wanted me to be. I was losing pieces of myself, one by one. The emptiness grew bigger. It felt like a big, black hole inside my chest. I started to do things to escape. I would take the car and just drive. I would drive to my old neighborhood. I would park the expensive car on a side street and just watch. I saw girls my age laughing with their friends, walking with their boyfriends. They didn't have money. They wore simple clothes, but their eyes were alive. They were living real lives. I was living in a golden cage. One afternoon, I went to a small park, a place I used to go when I was a teenager. I sat on a bench. I just wanted to feel normal for an hour. A young man was there, sketching in a notebook. He had kind eyes and a friendly smile. He saw me looking. "It's a beautiful day, isn't it?" he said. We started talking. His name was Leo. He was an artist. He was poor, but he was passionate about his work. He talked about colors and light. His face lit up when he spoke. He made me laugh, a real, genuine laugh. It felt strange, like a muscle I hadn't used in a long time. We talked for an hour. He didn't know who I was. He just saw a girl on a park bench. He treated me like a person, not Mrs. Sterling, not a possession, just Anna. When I had to leave, I felt a deep sadness. I wanted to stay there in the sun, talking to the kind artist, but I had to go back to my cage, back to my silent mansion, back to my role. Seeing Leo changed something in me. It was like a window had been opened in a dark room. It showed me what I was missing. Real connection, real conversation, real feelings. My life with Arthur was a lie. A comfortable, luxurious lie, but a lie nonetheless. The game I thought I was playing, I was starting to realize it was playing me. I had sold my life for comfort, and now my soul was starving. I didn't know what to do. I had the money. My family was safe. I should be happy, but I was miserable. The golden cage was starting to feel smaller and smaller. The walls were closing in, and I was afraid I had forgotten how to fly. The weeks after meeting Leo in the park were different. A part of me had woken up. I started to notice the bars of my cage more clearly. The perfect garden felt like a prison yard. The beautiful clothes felt like a uniform. The silent dinners with Arthur felt like a punishment. I kept thinking about Leo's easy smile, his passion for his art. He had so little, but he seemed so much richer than I was. I knew I couldn't see him again. It was too dangerous. It was a betrayal of my deal with Arthur. But more than that, it was a betrayal of myself. I couldn't live a double lie, pretending to be Arthur's wife and pretending to be a normal girl in the park. My life was already a performance. I didn't have the energy for another one. But the seed was planted. the idea of a different life, a real life. I started to push back in small, quiet ways. Arthur liked the house to be very quiet. He said it was peaceful. I started playing music during the day. Soft music at first, classical music. He didn't say anything. Then I started playing music I liked. The kind of music I listened to when I was a teenager. It felt like a small act of rebellion, filling the silent house with my own sounds. One evening at dinner, Arthur was talking about business, about buying another company. He was excited in his own quiet way. "It will make us a great deal of money," he said. Before, I would have just nodded and smiled. The perfect, supportive wife. But tonight, I didn't. "Arthur," I said, my voice was quiet but clear. "Are you happy?" He stopped talking. He looked at me, surprised. It was a real question, not small talk. "What do you mean?" he asked. "Of course I am happy. Business is good." "I don't mean business," I said. "I mean you. Your heart. Are you happy?" He looked uncomfortable. He put down his fork. He stared at his plate for a long time. "Happiness is for young people," he said finally. His voice was low. "I am content. I have success. I have a beautiful home, a beautiful wife." He looked at me when he said that. His eyes were not cold. They were sad. In that moment, he didn't look like a powerful, rich man. He just looked like a lonely old man. My anger at him softened. My game had been so simple. I was the victim. He was the rich man who bought me. But maybe it was more complicated. Maybe we were both trapped in this golden cage together. He was trapped by his money, his work, his loneliness. I was trapped by my choice. A few weeks later, Arthur got sick. It started with a bad cough, then a fever. The doctor came to the house. He said it was pneumonia. He said Arthur was old and his heart was not strong. He needed to rest. He needed to be careful. Suddenly, everything changed. Arthur wasn't the powerful man who ran a company anymore. He was a weak, frail man lying in bed. He needed help to sit up. He needed help to drink water. The nurses were there during the day, but at night they left. And I stayed. I sat in the chair in his room, the same room where he had sat when I was sick. At first, I did it because it was my duty. It was part of my job as his wife. I brought him his medicine. I read to him from the newspaper. But then, something shifted. He was different when he was sick, more open, more vulnerable. The walls he had built around himself started to crumble. One night, he couldn't sleep. He was in pain. He started talking. He told me about his first wife, Alina. He had loved her very much. They had been young and poor together. They built his company from nothing. "She was the one with the fire," he said, his voice raspy. "I was just good with numbers. She was the one with the dreams." He told me she died of cancer. It was a long time ago, but the pain in his voice was fresh. After she was gone, the house became quiet, he said. The work, the money, it was all that was left. It became a habit. a way to not feel the silence. I listened. I didn't say anything. I just listened. I saw him in a new light. He wasn't just a checkbook. He was a man who had loved and lost. A man who had filled his empty heart with money because he didn't know what else to do. He had bought a wife, me, to fill the silence in his house. It wasn't about love. It was about loneliness. My loneliness and his loneliness. We were two lonely people sitting in a big, empty house. I started to take care of him more. I made him soup. The cook was surprised. "I can do that, Mrs. Sterling," she said. "I know," I replied. "But I want to." I held his hand when the coughing was bad. His hand felt so fragile in mine. My feelings were changing. It wasn't love. Not the romantic love I read about in books. It was something else. A kind of affection. A connection. I started to see him not as Mr. Sterling, but as Arthur. A person. A fragile, lonely person. And I started to care about him. Genuinely care. The game was over. There was no game anymore. There was just a sick old man and a young woman who was looking after him. My heart felt heavy, but not with emptiness, with something new. Empathy. Sadness for him. Sadness for me. Sadness for the choices we had both made. Arthur didn't get better. The doctor said his heart was failing. We both knew he didn't have much time left. He spent most of his days sleeping. But in the moments he was awake, we would talk. He asked me about my dreams again. Not just being rich. My real dreams. I told him I used to like painting. I told him I wanted to travel. To see the world. Not just fancy resorts, but real places. One afternoon, he was very weak. He called me closer. He took my hand. "Anna," he whispered, "I'm sorry." Tears came to my eyes. "Sorry for what?" I asked. "For this," he said, looking around the big, cold room. "For buying you. I was a lonely old fool. You deserved a real life, a life with laughter and love." "It's okay, Arthur," I whispered, crying now. I made a choice too. I was a foolish young girl who only saw money. "The money will be yours," he said. His breathing was shallow. "All of it. Do something good with it, Anna. Don't let it be your cage. Let it be your wings. Live, for both of us." Those were some of the last words he said to me. He passed away 2 days later. Quietly, in his sleep. I was holding his hand. The big, silent house felt even bigger and more silent without him. The lawyers came. They read the will. Just as he said, everything was mine. The house, the company, the money. More money than I could ever imagine. I had won. I had reached the end of the game. I had the ultimate prize. I was a rich woman. Very, very rich. I stood by the big window in my bedroom. I looked out at the perfect garden. I had everything I ever wanted. The dream was now my reality. But I felt nothing. No joy, no victory, just a profound, aching emptiness. I was completely and utterly alone. Arthur was gone. The game was over. And I realized, with a clarity that hurt, that I hadn't won anything at all. I had just traded one kind of poverty for another. After Arthur died, my life was supposed to begin. I was young, I was beautiful, and I was incredibly rich. The world was mine. I could do anything, go anywhere. But for a long time, I did nothing. I stayed in the big, silent house. It felt like a ghost ship, filled with memories of a life that wasn't real. Arthur's things were everywhere. His books, his coats, the empty chair at the dining table. The house was no longer a cage. It was a tomb, a monument to my foolish dream. My parents were overjoyed about the money. "You are set for life, Anna," my mother said. "You never have to worry again." They didn't understand my sadness. They saw the money, the houses, the cars. They didn't see the hole in my heart. I bought them a bigger house. I gave them more money, but I couldn't visit them often. Being around their simple happiness made my own emptiness feel deeper. They had each other. They had love. What did I have? The rich people who were Arthur's friends suddenly wanted to be my friends. They invited me to parties, to lunches. They saw me not as a gold digger anymore, but as a powerful widow. I went to a few events. I wore the beautiful clothes. I smiled the polite smiles, but it all felt fake, a continuation of the performance I had been giving for years. I was tired of performing. I was tired of being Mrs. Sterling. I just wanted to be Anna again. But I wasn't sure who Anna was anymore. One day, I was cleaning out Arthur's desk. I found a small, old wooden box. Inside, there were letters. Letters from his first wife, Eleanor. I read them. They were full of love and laughter. They wrote about their struggles when they were poor, their dreams for the future, their deep love for each other. Reading their story, I felt a deep pang of jealousy. They had something real, something no amount of money could ever buy. That was the turning point for me. I couldn't live in Arthur's shadow anymore. I couldn't live in this cold museum of a life. I had to find my own life. Arthur's last words came back to me. "Don't let it be your cage. Let it be your wings." I made a decision. I sold the big house. I sold his company. It was a long and complicated process, but when it was done, I felt a huge sense of relief. Like a heavy weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I kept enough money to be comfortable, to be secure, but the rest, I didn't want it. It felt like Arthur's money, not mine. I used it to start a foundation, a charity in his and Eleanor's name. It helped young people start their own businesses. It helped them follow their dreams, the real kind of dreams, the kind born from passion, not from desperation. And what about me? I moved into a small, simple apartment. It had big windows and lots of sunlight. I bought a dog, a happy, energetic dog who filled the quiet rooms with noise and life. I threw away all the expensive, subtle clothes. I bought jeans and colorful t-shirts. I started painting again. I was not very good at it, but I loved it. I loved the feel of the brush in my hand, the smell of the paint. the joy of creating something that was mine. I traveled, not to fancy resorts. I went to small villages in foreign countries. I stayed in simple guest houses. I ate street food. I met people from all walks of life. I saw that a rich life has nothing to do with money. I saw people with very little who were full of joy. They had strong families. They had deep friendships. They had a connection to their community. They had the things I had traded away. One day, I was sitting in a small cafe in a sunny little town. I was sketching in my notebook, just drawing the happy faces of the people walking by. A man stopped at my table. "That's very good," he said. I looked up. It was Leo, the artist from the park. He looked the same kind eyes, the same easy smile. He didn't recognize me at first. I was different now. My hair was simple. I wore no makeup. My clothes were plain, but my eyes were different too. They were not sad anymore. "Anna," he finally asked, his head tilted. "Is that you?" We talked for hours. I told him everything, the whole story. I was not ashamed anymore. It was a part of my past, a mistake I had learned from. He listened. He didn't judge me. He understood. He told me about his life. He was still a struggling artist, but he was happy. He was doing what he loved. I am not telling you that we fell in love and lived happily ever after. Life is not a fairy tale, but we became friends, good friends. He taught me how to see the world like an artist, to see the beauty in small things, a crack in the pavement, the color of the sunset, the wrinkles on an old woman's face. He helped me find the beauty in my own life. My name is Anna. I was once a poor girl who dreamed of being rich. I married an old man to get that dream. I got the money. I got the houses. I got the clothes. But I lost myself. It was a hard lesson, a painful lesson. I learned that a cage made of gold is still a cage. I learned that true wealth is not in a bank account. It's in your heart. It's in the connections you make. It's in the joy you find in simple things. It's in being true to yourself. Now my life is small. My life is quiet, but it is my own, and it is full. I am not rich anymore, not in the way the world thinks, but I feel, for the first time, like the richest woman in the world. If you are listening to this, and maybe you are dreaming of an easy life, of money and beautiful things, please remember my story. Dreams are important, but be careful what you dream for. A rich life is not about what you have. It is about who you are. Find what makes your heart feel full. Find your own colors, your own music. Find your own truth. You can do this. You are stronger than you know. Your real life is waiting for you. Keep going.